Flake campaign for Senate rally. I'm Malcolm Barrett. I am a co-chair for the Flake campaign in Yavapai County. My co-chair is Jan Smith right here. Here's Jan. Before we get started, I'd like to give a rousing note of appreciation to our band, Just for Mama. Let's hear it. All right. We're glad to have our Sheriff Scott Masher here. There's Scott. And to be on the program later, Speaker of the House Andy Tobin. The Flake family, right behind me. Proceed with the program. It's my pleasure today to be able to introduce Cheryl Flake, wife of Jeff Flake. You know, Cheryl was born and raised in Chico, California, and I know where that is. Hey there, let's hear it for Chico. Both of her parents were music teachers, and Cheryl grew up singing, dancing, and playing the piano. So she's quite an accomplished musician, doing all forms of the musical arts. After graduating from high school, she attended BYU in Hawaii, and I think the very first day there on the beach, she met Jeff Flake. And from that time on, she was smitten. They later transferred to BYU in Salt Lake City, or rather in Utah. I know it's not Salt Lake, but anyway. And they were dating and doing all the stuff that kids do. She's performed with the BYU Young Ambassadors, and she's performed in the Middle East throughout Jordan, Turkey, and Greece. She's been all over the world. But a week after that she returned from that tour in the Mideast, she married Jeff Flake. And throughout their 26 years of marriage, she's been engaged in music, teaching piano and directing school-age girls in singing and dancing. While living in Washington in the late 80s, she worked on Capitol Hill for Senator Hines. You know, Heinz ketchup, that's the senator. And there's more to that story, but we're not going to tell it now. This experience got her really more interested in politics, and she actually became passionate about it. Cheryl laughs about the fact that she got a degree in travel and tourism, but has never received a dime for it, although she's traveled to over more than 30 countries around the world. Cheryl and Jeff have 5 children, 3 of whom are attending BYU. She's very active in her church and her community. She's on the PTO board at her school, and she volunteers on the board of the Arizona Junior Miss Scholarship Program. Please help me welcome Cheryl Flake.
Well, thank you, Mel. I appreciate that. It was a kind introduction. Well, as you heard, I met Jeff 25 plus years ago, and my first visit to Arizona was when I got to go visit Jeff's family and meet them in Snowflake. And I'd heard all about Arizona for years, and I got to really meet a real Arizona ranching family. So I went there, and I saw that he knew how to work hard. And a lot of you are from rural places throughout the state, and working on a farm and a ranch, you work hard every day. So I knew that he would do that, and I can tell you firsthand that he has taken those hardworking skills into his life, in his business profession, and now in Congress. And he's a hard worker in our family as well. And also, he has 10 brothers and sisters. So a family of 11 children, guess what? You better be able to stick up for what you believe. And if you want more seconds on dessert or dinner, you better be able to get them. But he also knows how to work with other people. And that's what I love about Jeff. He doesn't back down on his principles, on the things that he knows that are right and true, but he can get along with others and treat them civilly. So I love that about Jeff. And we just appreciate all of your support here today, and throughout these past 12 years as he served in the House of Representatives. We're looking forward to the Senate. But one person in particular that's been a huge help through the years is our own Speaker of the House, Andy Tobin. Andy has led the Arizona House during these economic times and has led the way by making tough budget decisions and shown leadership throughout these years. Andy and his wife Jennifer are great friends of ours, and it's been really fun this past year to hang with them on the campaign trail and rub shoulders with this wonderful couple. So it is my great privilege to introduce to you our own Speaker of the House, Andy Tobin.
Wow, thank you very much. It's always an honor to be here at these special steps. And I know it's always an honor for us to always gather as Republicans when we have a fight to be had. And remember, it wasn't so long ago, in 2010, we were talking about that just being the playoffs. And the 2012 was going to be the World Series. Well, let me tell you what, part of the World Series is standing right behind me in Congressman Jeff Flake, and we need to be sending him to the U.S. Senate. You know, in Yavapai County, it's just a special place. And we know that. And we look at folks who come visit us, and then we welcome them, and they like to stay here. How many of you are here just a year or a couple of years? Or certainly moved from California. You know, here we are. You're not going back. We know that. We're glad you're here. But, you know, we always get wary of people who want our support and want our votes. Well, this guy, you don't have to be wary about it all, because he believes in what we believe in here. And if you get to know him, he talks like we talk when we're here in this special place. It's about country over self. And you know, and I know, that when we meet here in this special place, that only those who really believe that are entitled to speak here. And you know as well as I know that we also demand courage over convenience. We demand freedom over politics. And we demand free enterprise over Obamacare. And we know, and this family knows, that in rural Arizona, you got to be tough. And you just heard Cheryl. We have so much in common. Jennifer and I are married almost 26 years. My wife Jennifer's over there, and we have 5 children ourselves. Besides all those good things, we know what it's like to put together a budget. It seems that the United States Senate has completely forgotten that, and in more than 1,000 days, they just can't even bring themselves to do it. Well, part of this battle in 2012, part of this World Series, is changing that Senate and sending members like Congressman Flake to the U.S. Senate to do what? Actually pass a budget. Can you imagine? And that's what this young man will do for us. You know, on a personal note, Congressman Flake and his family came to the state legislature for opening session. He's been in the forefront, having our back when we've been having and making those tough decisions and balancing a budget and pushing back on pensions that are out of control and helping fight our border and doing immigration reform. He's been there with us all along. And I will tell you that when they came in my office, it was the office that his uncle, Jake Flake, occupied. And that's also a very special place. And in my office, his uncle's cattle brand is on my veranda. Because it reminds this boy from New York City, who's been here in Yavapai County in Arizona for 30 years, how important it is that we remember our pioneers, we remember our rural folks, we remember those who sweat and toiled on these lands to build this state for us. And now we have a chance to send that kind of Arizonan to the United States Senate. Another very special place where it's time again to restore America's dream and belief in our system. Remember, this is a fight for our freedom this year. We've been talking about it for a couple of years now. And this is the World Series, and this is the head coach. Would you welcome with me the next senator from the great state of Arizona, my good friend, Congressman Jeff Flake.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker Tobin. Thank you, Jan Smith. Thank you all for being here. There's so many here. Sheriff Masher, thank you for being here again. Yeah, keep playing. I'll just listen. That's great. But Steve Pierce couldn't be here. I know he wanted to be here. Thank you, Mal Barrett. Thanks for what you're doing. Mal and Jan have been the county chairs. Lou there, thank you. Have helped so much here. I really appreciate everybody who's here. You have such great representation in the legislature with Speaker Tobin and with Karen Fann and with Steve Pierce. It just is a great thing. You know, Senator Kyle announced just about a year ago that he wouldn't run for re-election. I think you probably had the same reaction that all of us did. Just an overwhelming debt of gratitude for what he's done for the state. There have been, in Arizona, in our 100 years, only 10 U.S. senators in 100 years. It means they served for quite a long time. Carl Hayden, nearly 50 years. Paul Fannin, for a long time. Ernest McFarland. Barry Goldwater launched his first Senate campaign right here. His presidential campaign right here. So did John McCain. That's why it's so special to be here in Yavapai County. Senator Kyle has been the go-to guy for so many issues for so long. He's been in the Senate for the past 18 years when we do water settlement issues, forest health issues, any land policy issues, things that come as a consequence of Arizona being 82% publicly owned. Those are issues that Senator Kyle has immersed himself in. We can't afford there to be a void in the U.S. Senate when he leaves, so we've got to make sure that he's replaced by somebody who knows those issues, who understands them, and is committed to them. And I tell you, I am. Let me just say how nice it is to have the family here. Cheryl is here. Ryan, our oldest, who's up at BYU. Alexis, also at BYU. Austin, a freshman at BYU. We're going to have more kids away than home now. And then, that's good, I'm hearing. Well, it may be, but it's great to have them home for this bus tour. It's been a great thing. And also Tanner and Dallin, who are still with us at home. We are so grateful for a great family. And for me, Congress is a lot like an adventure. For them, it's more pure sacrifice. For me to miss games and outings and everything else. And so I just so much appreciate all that my family does for me and for those, every family who supports those who serve. It's pure sacrifice, and thank you. Especially to my wife, Cheryl. Let me give you just a rundown of what's happening in Washington today. I don't think you need much of a refresher. But do we have to go through that? We'll try it briefly. We have a $16 trillion debt. It has doubled just in the past few years. We have a deficit this year of $1.3 trillion. That will add to the $16 trillion debt. That is big. It's tough to fathom how large that is. But all we know is we've got to change direction. You can't go on. A family that doesn't pass a budget for 1,000 days isn't going to survive very long financially. And as Speaker Tobin said, we have a Senate that has not passed a budget for 1,000 days. That's over 3 years. Somebody mentioned the other day that when the Senate last passed a budget, the iPad hadn't even been invented yet. Now we're on the third generation, and we still don't have a budget out of the Senate. When the President proposed a budget a couple of years ago, it was taken to the floor of the Senate and put to a vote. Guess how many votes it got? 0. Not one. Not one person in his own party would support that budget. It's not a serious proposal. The President has not been serious, nor have the Senate Democrats, about getting control of this financial crisis. Let me say, though, we cannot lay all blame at the foot of the President. We were headed toward this fiscal cliff long before Barack Obama took the wheel. Republicans in the past have behaved badly. When we controlled both chambers in the White House, spending decisions were made that were wrong. Now, not all of us went along with it, but the party as a whole went off the rails. What we need is people to stand up and say to their own party or the other party, you're going in the wrong direction and you've got to change. And that's what I've done. And my party went off the rails on the question of earmarks, which are those special projects that members of Congress bring home. You know, when I grew up on the farm, we used to earmark. There's a different kind of earmark there. It was part of that brand, the F-bar brand. We put that on the left side and did a little V out of the left ear with a pocket knife. And then I used to, when I was a real little kid, I used to collect those earmarks and stack them on the fence. My dad gave me that job so he could say, tell us how many calves we've branded. You count those earmarks. And I thought I was doing something important. And anyway, he was just giving me busy work, but I'd stack those earmarks on the fence and then tell him. He'd already known how many calves we'd branded. But then I got to Congress and I was told, just go do some earmarks. You'll be all right. And I thought, that's bunk. We shouldn't be doing that. We're wasting money. It's corrupting. So I started going to the House floor and time after time started challenging these special spending projects. Money for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Why in the world should you as a taxpayer, I like rock and roll, I like bluegrass too, but why you should be paying for that? The Teapot Museum in North Carolina, do you think you ought to pay for that? No. How about the Punxsutawney Weather Museum in Pennsylvania? I don't think we ought to be paying for that. Or how about the Bridge to Nowhere? We all learned about that. In 2006, at its zenith, we approved about 15,000 earmarks worth $40 billion. And we'll bankrupt a country if we go on like that. And so I went to the floor again and again, started challenging these earmarks, and I got beat over and over again. Then a funny thing started happening. Members started to beat me to the floor and remove their own earmarks before I could challenge them. They got a little embarrassed. And it went on, and finally Republicans found religion and said, no more earmarks. Took the Democrats a little longer, but they did as well. So this year, there are no congressional earmarks in the Congress. Not one. We need to make sure that ban stays permanent now, and we've got to do that in the United States Senate. Now let me say, there are a lot of things that are nice about an election year. We've been trying for 3 years to convince this president that he's going in the wrong direction, and Harry Reid that he's going in the wrong direction. And we haven't been able to convince him. But the good thing about an election year is you don't have to convince anybody anymore. You just have to replace them. So, when the president and Harry Reid say we need to borrow 40 cents on every dollar we spend, we don't have to convince them it's wrong. What do we need to do? Replace them. When they say we need to spend more money for Solyndra, or do some more crony capitalism like this, we don't need to convince them that's wrong anymore. What do we need to do? Replace them. When we have Obamacare. In fact, let's stop here for a minute. How many celebrated yesterday's birthday? All right, I didn't see much happening. In fact, I didn't see the president celebrating his own creation. He stayed in the White House. Obamacare turned 2 years old yesterday. The president promised that health care premiums would go down. Has anybody's health care premium gone down in the last 2 years? All right. How about, he also promised that more people could access health care. Not so. In every sense, Obamacare is costing more money, denying health care, turning doctors away from the profession, making sure that Medicare won't survive longer than it should. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. Yet we can't convince the president that's the wrong direction to go. So we don't need to replace Obamacare. We need to repeal Obamacare. And that's my commitment when I get to the Senate. Let me just say that this year we're all celebrating another good anniversary, and that's Arizona's 100 years. 100 years old. My great-great-grandfather, William Jordan Flake, and his wife arrived in the Snowflake Valley, where Snowflake now is. Wasn't called Snowflake then, only after, 130 years ago. And as they looked across that windswept northeastern plateau, I doubt that they could have imagined that Arizona, 100 years later, 130 years later, would be a cosmopolitan, wonderful place with nearly 7 million people. But I know that they thought we can at least make the next generation better off than we are. And that's been the hallmark of Arizona. that every generation has made sure that the next generation can live better than they did. And let me tell you, it was a difficult proposition at that time. A few years after they arrived in the Snowflake Valley, my great-grandfather, James Madison Flake, was deputized by the sheriff to go and arrest an outlaw who had come through, part of the Hash Knife outfit, I believe. So he took his brother, Charles Love Flake, and they went to arrest this man. They got to the place, I believe it was a saloon, got him, disarmed him, or so they thought. And when they were taking him outside, he reached in his boot, pulled out a gun, and shot my great-uncle in the neck, killing him instantly. And then he shot the next round through the ear, the left ear of my great-grandfather, rendering him deaf in that ear for the rest of his life. My great-grandfather returned fire, killed the outlaw, and then was forced to take care of his brother's family for years, as everybody did at that time. Just 3 years later, he stood at the bedside of his wife as she died after a short illness, leaving him with 9 children of his own to raise. He said in his journal that I read a while ago, he said, "Once again, I must kiss the sod and face a cloudy future." And he did. And he threw himself into other causes. He raised his kids and others, married again, had even more kids. And then he also got involved in politics. He traveled across the state, and his journal mentions him coming several times to Prescott, right here, for conventions. And one cause that he was committed to was the cause of women's suffrage. He so admired his wife and what she went through that he threw himself into that cause, and he even went as far away as Colorado for that cause. And Arizona, as you know, was only the 7th state to approve the women's right to vote. And soon after Arizona was a state, it was ratified by the U.S. Constitution. And I think that he would be very proud to look down today and see that 52% of those who vote are women. And I'm proud of that heritage that I have. Cheryl and I received a call just the other night. It was a late night call for me in Washington, not quite as late for Cheryl here in Arizona, and Ryan and his wife Lindsay, and Lindsay is not here, and I'll tell you why right now. But Ryan and his wife Lindsay informed us that they were going to be parents and we were going to be grandparents. It's the most wonderful call that a couple can receive. That's why Lindsay's not here. She's going through morning sickness right now. And the bus ride yesterday just about did her in. But it was great to hear, but I immediately thought, what kind of opportunities will this child have? Are we going to be the first generation that doesn't pass a brighter future on to our kids and grandkids as we had passed on to us? That's what we have to remember. That's our responsibility. And let me tell you, that's my commitment when I get to the United States Senate. My overriding priority will be to ensure that my own kids, and now grandchild, and your kids and grandkids will have even better opportunities than you have had. We can do it. We've always done it. We have challenges, and severe ones, but nothing like those challenges that have been faced before. I'm so grateful for all that you do for the cause, for all you do to support so many good causes and candidates, to make sure that we, once again, live by the principles that our founding fathers intended: limited government, economic freedom, individual responsibility. When Barry Goldwater ran for office, ran for president, he had a book called Conscience of the Conservative. There's one line that I like particularly, and it's kind of been my motto when I'm back in Washington. He said, "My goal is not to streamline government or to make it more efficient, for I mean to reduce its size." And if there was ever a time that we need a smaller government, it's this one. What we have to have are people who are prepared to go to the United States Senate and make the difficult decisions that lie ahead on entitlement reform, on health care reform, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. These are things that have to be reformed if they're going to survive. If we're going to have our kids and grandkids have the same future that we have had, the same opportunities, we have to make the tough decisions. Sometimes it will require casting lonely votes. I'm prepared to do that. I've done that. And that's my commitment. I'll take the same record that I've had in the House into the United States Senate. So please help me do that. Thank you for all you're doing. Thanks for coming out today. Thanks for all you do.